I've been in enterprise software sales for over 6 years. I went from SDR to enterprise account executive, and I spent 2 of those years in the middle as an SDR manager coaching hundreds of reps just like you, these exact techniques. Today I'm covering the value statement framework that has improved the results of all of these reps I've coached, and not just improved them, but improved them very quickly. And on top of that, I'm gonna deliver a live role play myself because this is what I actually use to this day of this framework in action. So let's get into it. All right, so before we get into any scripts or templates, I wanna quickly take a step back and rewire how you've probably been taught to think about cold calling. I personally disagree with a lot of the training I see out there on YouTube, on LinkedIn, from other SDR managers at companies that I've seen coach you because I've worked with many of you. A lot of it way overcomplicates the process. They want you asking a million different directional questions, and there's a million different ways the cold call could go. They teach things like permission-based openers, pattern interrupts. I have nothing against those, but it's just not my style, and I see a lot of new reps struggle with them. So I want to just peel it back and first think about what is the plan? What is the goal? When you pick up the phone, what is the outcome that you're looking for? This probably sounds obvious, but a lot of people are trained to forget the very simple fact that your goal is to set a meeting. It's not to have a 50-minute discovery call. I see these posts on LinkedIn about, oh, I had a 50-minute cold call that turned into a great meeting, and it's like, great. That's well suited for LinkedIn. You'll get a lot of pats on the back for that. It makes for a great story, but that's not a scalable process. You don't want all of your cold calls to go that way. You want to be concise and get to the point and tell them what you want. Your goal is to set a meeting. Therefore, your ultimate goal is to get time on their calendar. So your goal is to give off just enough value where they think it's worth more of their time, spending more of their time out of their busy day and work week to take a meeting with you. And in order to do this and book as many meetings as possible over the course of a month or a quarter, you need to be targeted. Yes, you need to be high quality in your messaging, but you need to also be able to do it at scale. 50 or 100 cold calls a day at an 8 out of 10 quality is much better than 5 cold calls a day, but you put in a bunch of research, you researched their LinkedIn from top down, you know where they went to school, what their dog's name is, and you came 100% prepared. Option A is a lot better. And the other key mindset that goes into this technique is that we are gonna be the ones taking control and doing most of the talking at the outset of the cold call. This differs from a lot of the training. We're not gonna lead off with a bunch of questions because we haven't earned that right yet. They don't know who we are. They weren't expecting our call. We probably just interrupted them in the middle of their very busy workday. They're probably ripping some spreadsheet together. We are gonna take control and answer 3 questions, which I'll cover in a second, that's gonna satisfy their base needs and get them to open up. And the goal of this is also to limit variance. I don't want to ask a bunch of questions in the beginning because that's where you start to get off track, and it's hard to reel it back in to the reason you reached out in the first place, which is to book a meeting and set time on their calendar. So this takes us to the actual technique that I call the 3W formula, the 3 W's that you need to answer at the outset, ideally within the first 30 seconds of every cold call, to get them to drop that defensive guard where they're giving you a defensive tone and pushing you off the phone before you even get a chance to tell them why you're calling. And those 3 W's are who you are, why you're calling, and what you want. And there's also only 3 key steps to this cold call script. Again, it's not complicated. It's not 8 steps or the 7 C's of cold calling. There's the opening, there's the value statement where you deliver that who, why, what, and then there's the close at the end. So I'll quickly break down each of these steps and notice how I visually represented how long, like what percentage each of these steps should take on the cold call. And the opening is very, very short because again, I want to take control and limit variance. So what I teach people to do, rather than permission-based openers, pattern interrupts, hey, do you have 27 seconds for me to tell you why I'm calling? And then you can decide whether you want to continue the conversation. I don't want to play any of those games. You have to have a certain personality to pull that off, in my opinion. And a lot of new SDRs, including myself, when I tried that stuff, it was very uncomfortable. I dreaded cold calling. It raised my cold call anxiety. So I choose to give what I call an assumptive formality. And the name of that represents what I'm looking for. Is I'm literally in my head, I'm thinking, how do I get this person to just give me a formality back? Because the second they do, I'm gonna take control and then go into telling them who I am, why I'm calling, and what I want. So the overarching goal is essentially to advance to step 2. And this is what an assumptive formality sounds like. Hey Jim, this is Connor Murray calling from X company. How are you? Notice the downward inflection in how are you. It's not, hey Jem, this is Connor Murray calling from X company. How are you today? The first one is a lot more likely to just elicit something like good, how are you? They could even sound confused, but whatever they give you, that's okay. Even if they throw you a little curveball like, hey, I'm going into a meeting right now. You can say, great, yeah, I'll be quick. I'm just reaching out because. That's my next line. You can either say, I'm just reaching out because, or the reason I'm calling is who, why, what. But I literally seek to make the cold call opening the same every single time so that I can limit variance. Again, the permission-based openers and pattern interrupts, in my opinion, they could have a million different responses to that, and then it's hard for you to just pull it back in and take control of the call. So that downward inflection, elicit the formality. Great, I'm just reaching out because, and then we're gonna take control and answer those three questions. Very simply, who you are, why you're calling, what you want. And really, most of this is pretty self-explanatory. The who you are, you don't have to complicate. It's generally just one sentence. I'm part of the team, or I'm part of the account team that supports X company, their company, regarding XYZ processes. For the why you're calling, this is the most important part of the value statement. You want to answer two key questions in about 2 sentences. And those questions are what priorities and challenges you solve. In other words, what does your company do? And then how you typically solve those challenges. You'll see what I mean when I give an example at the end of the video, but really 3 sentences total, you're already through the who and the why. And then the what, again, is time on their calendar. You want to get this out early. I prefer to state my intention at the beginning of the cold call. Give them that out because a lot of people are actually legitimately busy. You might be calling them at 3:58 in the afternoon and they have a meeting at 4 p.m. they need to jump on. If you're just quick and to the point and tell them who you are, why you're calling, and that you're actually looking to meet next week, a lot of people are just a lot more likely to say, sure. But if you start trying to ask them a bunch of questions like, what are you using for your system right now and how's that going for you? They're like, dude, I'm about to get on a meeting in 2 minutes. I don't have time to talk about my software system right now. I'm getting on with my CFO to run through the financials of the company in literally 60 seconds. So who, why, what, you're gonna be able to book a lot of meetings this way. A backup option, and I consider this a little bit more advanced. When I get new SDRs, I like to tell them who, why, and get that what out, get them used to asking for time on their calendar. When you get used to that and you start booking meetings, you can actually just start telling them who you are and why you're calling before asking them for time on their calendar. You truly just make a statement. Here's who I am, here's what priorities and challenges we solve, and here's how we typically solve them for people like you. And then you just pause and you get their feedback to that. A lot of reps think, and they're trained this way again, that they have to be the one leading off with questions and taking control of the call in that way. When in reality, you don't have to ask a question. If you make a good enough value statement, in their head they're like, oh, and they'll actually just start gushing about what their problems are. They might not immediately take it to a meeting, but they'll be like, oh, okay, thanks for reaching out. What'd you say your name was? Yeah, I'll write it down. We have had some issues with our supply chain planning system. We're using a whole bunch of different systems. It's hard to coordinate and have everyone acting off the same data. They'll just start babbling. And then based on what they tell you, then you can say, great, yeah, this is typically what we work with customers on. And actually, when I was reaching out, I was more looking to set aside some time next week just to get introduced and aligned with your priorities going forward. You can wait and save that bullet in the chamber before going into what you want, which is time on their calendar. Then we get to the third part of the technique, which is the close. And if your value statement is strong, the better you get at this, a lot of times you don't even need to close them. They'll close you. They'll be the ones asking for the meeting, or the first time you go for the meeting, they actually just say yes. So you'll start winning some off this value statement. If they push back, what I teach reps is to first double down and sell time. You have one more bullet in the chamber. Whatever objection they give you, a common one is, hey, thanks for reaching out. We already work with so-and-so competitor. We already use XYZ solution for what you just said. Instead of saying, how's that going for you? Do you have a renewal coming up? Are you open to working with other companies? Because again, they're in the middle of their workday. They're not thinking about changing their software system on a cold call, and you're not very likely to get them to change their mind in any significant way. So I more double down, acknowledge what they told me, acknowledge what their objection is, but then tell them, reaffirm it makes sense to me anyway. Got it, yeah, we work with customers of X competitor all the time. This is just more to get introduced and aligned with your priorities going forward and introduce you to our team that will be responsible for supporting XYZ company for the foreseeable future. So do you have time on Wednesday or Thursday next week? That's just an example, but I promise you a lot of people are interested in your value statement. Their natural reaction is to give some sort of excuse, but when you double down with conviction like that, you'll end up booking the meeting that way. And if they still push back, Here is where you can open up the conversation and start asking some targeted questions. I get a lot of feedback. Connor, do you recommend asking questions at all? The answer is yes, absolutely. But I think this is the time to do it. After you've already delivered value, you probably have been on the phone with them for 60 to 90 seconds, maybe even 2 minutes at this point. So they've signaled they have a little bit of time on their hands. That is when you can start opening it up, asking a targeted question, but the key word is targeted. So maybe you tell them, this is how we work with customers of XYZ company. Usually that company handles these processes and we work with them on these processes. What are you using for XYZ processes that we handle? You get your response to that, but I still recommend you wanting to pull it back into what you want, which is time on their calendar as much as possible. I'd rather be doing this discovery on an actual discovery call when I can properly prepare. You can get with your account executive, you're a lot more likely to get an opportunity. That's when I want to be opening up the conversation. I personally don't want these 10 to 50 minute cold calls that people brag about all over LinkedIn. And then some other key factors to improving and making this technique work for you before I get into the live role play I'll deliver is the key is being confident and concise. You can put this technique into action and deliver who you are, why you're calling, what you want, but unless you actually sound confident, you have that confident downward inflecting tone, you sound certain about why you're reaching out, you don't have an upward inflecting tone, and you're using assumptive language like, I'm looking to set up some time next week, or let's set up some time next week, instead of what I hear a lot, like, if possible, I'd love to set up some time next week if you're open to it. Putting these little caveats on there because you're not actually confident in what you're reaching out about. This is 90% of your success on cold calls because they quite literally can't see you. So the only thing they have to go about and whether you're actually valuable and potentially spending more time with, yes, the words you say are important, but it's how you say them that's by far the most important piece. And then the other thing and why this technique works really well and it's easy to improve upon, it's easy to track your results. When you tell them who you are, why you're calling, what you want, when you physically get that out, there's only 3 possible outcomes now and they're all pretty easy to track. Either they say, nope, take a hike, click, and there's really nothing you can do. You just log that as a no. If they say, great, yeah, let's set up some time next week, that's best case scenario, doesn't happen a lot, but you log that as a yes. Then the only other outcome is some form of objection, and you can track how many times you handled objections, which ones were you better or worse at handling. This is how you can figure out where you need to focus and double down your efforts. And it's pretty easy to do this. I like to track in batches of 100. You can just make 3 Excel columns, yes, no, objection, and then you just log which outcome it was. Now, as promised, I'll run through this in action. I whipped up an example for myself and just chose a random example. In this example, I'm a tech sales rep. I sell financial software, specifically in the life science industry. So I'm calling someone in finance in the life science industry. And we'll go through the 3 simple steps and use the 3W formula. So first is the assumptive opening. Hey Jim, this is Connor Murray calling from X Company. How are you? Good. I'm just reaching out because I'm part of the strategic life science team that supports X Company regarding back office financial applications. And we work with companies on priorities related to clinical trial planning, commercial planning, and product lifecycle management, usually by managing data collection through our electronic data capture process and reducing the amount of manual spreadsheets and different data sources. And I know I kind of called you out of the blue here, so I'm more just looking to set aside some time next week to get introduced and aligned with your priorities going forward and introduce you to the team here at Y Company. How's your calendar look on Wednesday or Thursday? So I know it sounds like a mouthful, but go back. That was probably about 30 to 35 seconds to get it all out. And I answered those 3 questions. So I'm going to proactively prevent a lot of objections like, where'd you say you were reaching out from and how'd you get my number? Because this is a pattern interrupt in itself. People aren't used to when they receive cold calls, to them receiving an answer like that or being told who you are, why you're calling, what you want. They're used to, how are things going today? I saw you did this. How is that working for you? And notice how I wrote that out. You don't have to have this memorized as long as you don't sound red. You should practice this. And when I was an SDR, I literally took 10 minutes a day, which is not that much, but I would literally run through that same script until it flowed off my tongue, till it was literally second nature. And that's all it takes. 10 minutes a day, you can run through that like 45 times, and you do that over the course of a month, you will have said this literally like 800 times plus you're gonna get really, really good at it. And in that example, I did go straight for the what I wanted. I stated my intent out of the gate. This is what I teach new SDRs. But as you get more comfortable going off script and having a little back and forth, that's when you can actually just finish with the why. So in this example I was talking about, we work with companies on priorities related to clinical trial planning, commercial planning, and product lifecycle management, usually by managing data collection through our electronic data capture process and reducing the amount of manual spreadsheets and different data sources across your organization. And then you just pause, and it will be uncomfortable for 1 to 3 seconds, but then they will just start sharing with you how what you just told them relates to their business. And then you can use that and save that bullet in the chamber to then say, this is great, this is exactly what we work on with customers, our team specializes in this area, and I was actually just reaching out because I want to set more time next week perhaps when we can properly introduce you to our team and get aligned with these priorities going forward. So does Wednesday or Thursday work for you? It kind of naturally leads to the meeting. So I've seen this technique work for SDRs all across the tech industry, selling different products into different markets. This consistently improves results, and it does so quickly. So if you're looking for more hands-on coaching on implementing this technique for your own company, your role, the personas you reach out to, check out the link in the pinned comment below. Our course communities are helping people like you do just that. Message me when you join. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.